Hey, hello, welcome. How y'all doing? Happy Saturday. Happy March 5th, 2023. I am Coach Yolanda, certified spiritual life coach, and a whole lot of other stuff, the owner of Evolving Spirit Wellness. And I am so grateful that we are here again on this beautiful day. I am in the first state, the great state, little tiny state of Delaware, and I'm looking outside. It looks so beautiful, so different than the past couple of days where it was raining. I don't know where you are, but I hope that you are well. I know we are experiencing some extreme weather in parts of the United States that don't typically get the type of weather that they are experiencing. California's got snow, people still snowed in. Parts of the South are dealing with some issues. I think we better pay attention to what's going on around us in terms of things that we are not used to popping up and trying to see what we're made of. I am grateful that I've always lived on the East Coast because we get to experience all of the seasons, whether it's winter, fall, spring, summer. We sometimes get them all in one day. And so we know pretty much how to deal with extreme weather. But for those of you who are in parts of the country where it is not your normal behavior to shovel snow, you probably didn't even have a shovel, you probably didn't have boots, coats, all of those sorts of things. Our thoughts are with you as you are trying to figure out how to manage all of that. And so, as we are in a new month, and all new things are coming up, let's think about ways that we can support one another when something new is popping up. If I have experience in something and you may not, then I should be offering you assistance. If you have experience in something that's new to me, then you should be offering assistance. This is a time when we should be coming together to support one another with the wisdoms that we have gained throughout our lifetime. And so I hope that what we are seeing in terms of new things popping up for people also helps those of us to be better stewards and better neighbors and better participants of the collective consciousness. Because if we're not helping one another, then what's the point? And so I want to say thank you to those of you who have been so patient. Um, I didn't even have time to really explain to everyone that there's some new things going on with Evolving Spirit Wellness. My time is being spent in other places. When I said that 2023 was going to be the year of the inner child, I had no idea that it was going to lead me into working with actual developmental stages and stages. And so from Monday to Friday, I get to spend some time with people in the birth to 4 years of age range by developing curriculum and making sure that they have everything that they need, everything that we talk about, everything that we have been talking about in terms of our own inner children. I am now doing with actual children. And so I said that this was going to be the year of the inner child. And God was like, yeah, okay. If you really want it to be, it's going to be. And so thank you for your patience as I figure out my new normal in terms of being in different places and spaces. Evolving Spirit Wellness is growing, growing, growing. And so I have to figure out who's coming along with me to support me in that journey. So I know I'm going to have to get some help. I know I'm going to have to hire some folks to do some things. And again, I thank you for your patience. Last Sunday, I had my good girlfriends coming in. I haven't even watched the video to see how noisy they were in the background. I I laughed because when I was done, they were like, "Were we quiet enough?" I was like, "Absolutely not. Y'all were making so much noise," but I loved it. And so, for those of you who watched last Sunday, thank you for the patience of the noise in the background, but it was all good. Like, I didn't know how much I needed that as I was working toward being in a new place and space in my life. I'm so grateful for those women and what they mean to my life. And if you have that in your life, then you know what I'm talking about. And so, as we are in March, we are also in a new developmental stage. We were in the birth to 18 months. Now we're going to be talking about 18 months to 3 years of age. We are in the nitty gritty because baby, there's a lot that goes on between 18 months and 3 years of age. Again, I get to see little people every day. And so I'm looking at the differences between the 18-month-olds and the 3-year-olds. And it doesn't seem like it's a lot of time, but there's so much that goes on developmentally in that span of time. And so we're going to start to talk about that. I wanted to start with courage because that is what I've been inspired by when I watch these little people trying to figure out how to do things when everybody wants them to do what we want them to do. And their brains are slowly discovering their own autonomy, their own independence, in their own way of doing things. And so, as we've been going along the developmental stages, the birth to 18 months was also correlating with the root energy center, root chakra, first chakra on our bodies. The 18-month to 3-year-old developmental stage deals with the sacral chakra. That's the second, right below your navel, which is the seat of emotions. Because ain't nobody more emotional than a toddler. My goodness, my gracious. If you can remember your children or children that you work with at that age and stage, the emotions are all over the place. And oftentimes, even when I'm feeling over emotional, I think of myself as being and acting like a toddler. And so much goes on in this age and stage. I wanted to start with courage because I recognize how much courage it takes for a little person to navigate all of the things that are going on developmentally in their brain, in their bodies, and in the world that they are exploring. You know, this is a time frame when children start to understand that they are independent of their caregivers, that they have their own thoughts, their own feelings, and a lot of that stuff is impulsive. No one is as impulsive as a toddler. They think of something, boom, they're already on it. And so we are challenged, those of us who are taking care of little people, we are challenged with dealing with that impulsivity, and it still shows up as an adult. Your caregivers, whether it was your mother, your father, grandparents, whoever took care of you when you were in that 18-month to 3 year of age range, had to deal with all of your impulsive thoughts and behaviors and feelings all over the place. Sometimes, like I talked about the weather, sometimes experiencing all of it in 1 hour. You're crying one moment, you're happy the next, you're tired, you're sleepy. All of these things are going on. And here you are, a little person trying to regulate all of that. It is a lot. And so it does take a lot of courage because it is one of the most emotional times of our lives. It's one of the times when we need to be validated most. And if that is disrupted, if the validation of emotions is disrupted, either because the caregivers are more concerned with being the dominant force in the relationship or because of safety reasons. A lot of what we, tell toddlers to do and not to do is because we want them to be safe. They don't care. They're impulsive. Yes, they'll run out in the street. Yes, they'll jump off of stuff they're not supposed to jump off of. Yes, they'll put things in their mouths. And it's the caregiver's responsibility to make sure that they are safe. But that doesn't always register when you are a toddler. You are discovering about the world around you. You are discovering about yourself. And so that is why 2-year olds love the word no. And we talk about the terrible twos. 2-year olds are not terrible. 2-year olds are figuring out that that word is powerful and that there are things that they want to do. And that is how they learn, through playing, through exploring. And when you get to that point where you feel like you want to step out of the comfort of your caregivers and explore the world, it takes courage to do that. And sometimes caregivers can disrupt that freedom and that independence by constantly being on top of every little thing that kids are doing. I'm so grateful that you made it this Sunday, Giselle, because I know last week we were both talking about starting new things in our lives. And so courage is right on time for both of us, because now is where we could be having tantrums. Now is where we could be feeling the effects of, did I make the right decision? Am I where I'm supposed to be? Am I doing this right? This is the time frame when things are new, when we start to ask ourselves, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? One of the things that can spring up in this developmental age and stage is that constant thought of, am I being good? Because that is sometimes the pervasive language for every child. Be a good girl, be a good boy. That is a lot of pressure, particularly when you want to do things that may not meet the boundaries of being a good toddler, being a good kid. That's a lot of pressure to put on a young child. And a lot of what caregivers do comes with those boundaries. I want you to be good. I want you to follow directions. I want you, in some ways, to be a little robot. Why? Because it makes things easier for me, because it keeps you safe, because I think that's what my role as a caregiver is. And it's only been in the last couple of years, couple of decade or so, where we've really started to think about the social emotional area of development when it comes to toddlers, and how we have got to pour into children emotionally so that we are supporting their emotional health. We don't always consider that. We don't always consider that when children are crying, we're trying to keep them from crying. When children are angry, we're trying to keep them from being angry. When children are simply sometimes just laughing, we want to know what they're laughing about. We are doing some damage when we are disrupting the emotional growth of children. And so, if you had the experience, because a lot of this research and data is new, I know when I was a young child, was nobody thinking about my emotional health. They were making sure that I was safe, that I was well fed, that I was well taken care of. I don't know that anyone was considering my emotional health when I was 2 years old. And so those issues can spring up as adults if there was a disruption in your emotional regulation. 18 months to 3 years of age is where children also learn how to self regulate. And again, if that gets disrupted or not poured into, it can show up as we are adults. And so, some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves, and we will continue to ask ourselves this entire month, is, did I receive the emotional support that I needed then? And am I receiving the emotional support that I need now as an adult? And I'll give you some exercises as we go through the different months in terms of asking yourself that question. Again, none of these questions are for you to go and ask your caregivers, if you have the ability to do that, and say, well, y'all taking care of me emotionally when I was 2 years old. We don't do the blame game here at Evolving Spirit Wellness. We do the self discovery. We do, let me tap into the consciousness that I am currently experiencing and see if there is a root cause from my past, so that I can look at myself truthfully and not beat myself up for some of the things that I either did not get when I needed it, or the things that I'm not giving myself now when I need it. And so only you can really ask yourself these questions and answer them truthfully. Do you have a problem saying no? Do you have a problem with setting boundaries, setting limits, either for yourself or with other people? Do you have problems or challenges expressing yourself, or are you like the person who wants people to figure you out? We have a whole host of individuals who have difficulty expressing themselves. This is the age range from 18 months to 3 years of age where we start to develop language, where we can start to tell people what's going on with us. We can tell people when we're hungry. We can tell people when we're thirsty. We can tell people when we're sad, when we're mad, when we're angry. And again, if it wasn't supported, your emotional health in this developmental stage, you might still have some of those challenges now with expressing your feelings. You might. And you have to be honest with yourself. Again, I come from that generation where children were to be seen and not heard, where children were supposed to follow directions no matter what. We were little robots of us. And our emotional health wasn't really talked about. And so I wanted to start this month off, this week off with courage, because just think about it. If you did not receive the emotional support that you needed when you were younger, and you are looking for it now, you are recognizing how important it is for you now, it takes courage to do that. And so, as always, I have to look up definition of courage from the Revealing Word Metaphysical Dictionary. And I'm going to show it to you now. Courage is a spiritual quality that enables one to remain poised and centered in God amidst great difficulties and danger. And so ask yourself, are there some danger? Is there some danger or some difficulties that you might be going through right now in your life? Do you feel poised? Do you feel centered? Do you feel as though you are dealing with those difficulties and things where you don't feel safe in a balanced and centered way? If not, it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It doesn't mean that, all is lost. It means that you now have the information that you need to change that, to transform that, to regulate yourself. We don't always get everything that we're supposed to get when we are supposed to get it. That is the story of every person's childhood. It does not mean that you were abused, even if that was part of your story. I don't want to discount that. Doesn't mean that your mother, your father, your grandparents, whomever your caregivers were, dropped the ball. It simply means that when you needed particular things, it may not have been present, or it may have been present in a way that you were not able to receive it or process it because you were a child. For those of you in the evolved community, you know those tenets of inner child work. And that first one is children are always innocent. I cannot understand what anyone would think that a 2 year old or 3 year old could do that would warrant a punishment so severe. Sometimes, and if you've been out in the world for even a fraction of the time that it takes to be out in the world, to see how we talk to young children, it sometimes breaks my heart because I'm thinking, what could a 2 year old have done? What could someone who's only been on earth for 2 years have done so horribly that would warrant the type of language that is being used, the type of behavior that they are seeing? And so we have to think about that. That creates so many different difficulties in expressing yourself, so many ways in directing your life as an adult, if that is in your history. Even if it's in your most recent history of a year ago, if there was someone in your life that was damaging your emotional health, it can also cause you to have difficulties being there for yourself emotionally. And if you know that to be true, and you desire a healthy environment, a healthy emotional center where you feel courageous, because we may not be able to change the difficulties, the challenges, the things that are external to us, but we absolutely can change the way that we process it and that the way that we hold it. Good afternoon, Chicago. Oh, look how beautiful you are. So, we are going to meditate on that level of courage because I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. Because, again, if you've lived in the world long enough, I know you have sustained some emotional damage. I know you have not received the emotional support that you need. I know I haven't. And I'm not trying to make a list of all of the people that have done me wrong or have done things. I'm looking at my own internal mechanisms to say, what can I do to make sure that I am there for myself emotionally? What can I do to make sure that I am giving myself and my inner children the emotional support that is necessary for me to have the courage to show up for myself when I know that I need to, for me to be able to set the healthy boundaries that I need to set in my life? How am I going to make the choices and decisions that are best for me if I'm not there for myself emotionally, if I'm not taking care of that area of development by looking back and saying, okay, Yolanda, you know, you had an experience when you were younger, being the younger child. Now, there were only two of us, but I'm the baby. And I may or may not have gotten away with some things that my older brother did not get away with. And so I had to learn that just because you're the baby don't mean you always get your way. Just because you're the only girl doesn't mean that you get your way. Just because you are the apple of your daddy's eye doesn't mean that you always get your way. You cannot have a tantrum when things don't go your way. But that is what I learned as a toddler. If I want something and I have a tantrum, then I will get it. And that still shows up for me now. I have tantrums with myself. Other people don't have to see the tantrum for the tantrum to be present. How many of us are out there having tantrums on our own where we're folding our arms? I don't want to do this anymore. I give up. This is not going the way that I want it to go. All of that language is going on in our head, and we're behaving like 2 year olds because we didn't get our way. 2 year olds have to figure out how to regulate that. And so do we as adults. We have to figure out, how do I regulate my emotions so that I'm not giving up all the time, so that I'm not beating myself up all the time? How am I drawing on that centered and poised? Remember the definition, centered and poised, so that I'm not giving up, so that I'm not beating myself up, so that I'm not internalizing somebody's no as a commentary on who I am. How do I develop the courage to regulate myself emotionally, even if the world is not being nice to me, is not being kind to me, even if things are not working out the way that I thought that they were going to work out? Giselle says, lots of questions. Yes, 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 yes. Now, we've been talking about trusting ourselves. We've been talking about telling the truth. And one of the things that I think can support all of us when it comes to courage is, number one, you got to tell the truth. When you are disappointed in yourself, tell the truth about it. Because if you don't, and you just internalize it, then that disappointment gets projected onto other people, other places, and other things. Tell the truth. When you know you've let yourself down, when you know you've dimmed your light, when you know you didn't express yourself in the way that you wanted to, when you know that you didn't follow the directions that you had laid out for yourself, you may have said yes when you wanted to say no. You answered that phone call where you said you wasn't going to answer that phone call anymore. A lot of what we do because it's comfortable or convenient. And sometimes that does not correlate with courageous. Courage will sometimes, and most times, have you going against what you're comfortable doing. Courage says, we've been there, done that. You said you wasn't going to do that no more. So you have to make another choice and you have to do things differently. And so if you are being called to practice courage in this phase of your life, I say trust yourself, and also tell the truth. Tell the truth. If you're afraid, tell the truth. This developmental stage that we're talking about right now is where we also develop truth. We think, when you're a baby, you think the world revolves around your parents and that they know everything. When you start to realize mommy doesn't always know because mommy doesn't always show up. And I can do some of these things for myself. I don't need my mommy to feed me anymore. I don't need my mommy to dress me anymore. I don't need anyone to do the things that they used to do for me. And so now I got to have faith in myself. We also don't think about that. Little kids are building up their faith in themselves. If we are constantly jumping in little kids' faces when they need to figure something out, how are they supposed to develop faith in themselves? Same thing with you. If you are constantly giving up, if you're not trusting, if you're not staying on that course, how do you develop the faith that is going to be necessary to do the courageous things that you need to do in your life? You have to tell the truth. And so, one of the hardest things for me is to tell the truth when I'm afraid to myself. Even if other people know it, I sometimes still struggle with saying, Yolanda, you are afraid to do something new. You are afraid to look like a fool. You are afraid that you're going to make a mistake. You're afraid that you're going to lose some money. You're afraid. The more we tell the truth, the more that we can expose it, and then we can start to pick it apart. Because most of the things that we're afraid of are not even based in truth. They're based in some old thoughts, some old beliefs, some old perspective. And so, if we are being called to be courageous like a 2-year-old, we have to be like those 2-year olds. How often have you ever seen a child who's trying to do something and they might have a little tantrum, but they're going to keep trying and they're going to keep trying and they're going to keep trying. They are determined, like we talked about last week. They're going to keep trying, even though they may have looked foolish, even though other people might be laughing and saying, "What are you doing? You're not old enough to do that." They're going to keep trying. We have to have that same level of faith in ourselves that if I keep at it, if I stay consistent, if I stay committed, if I recognize that this is new, it's not hard, it's new. And because it's new, I may not be familiar with everything that I need to, but I'm going to figure it out. That I'm not some robot who can just follow examples of what I'm supposed to do, that I'm willing to explore beyond what I've been doing. I don't care how old we get, exploring new things is courageous. If we get so complacent, where again, we're operating at those extremes where I'm just going to keep doing what I know to do and not explore anything, how are you going to learn? How are you going to grow? How are you going to develop the faith? How are you going to develop the courage? The courage. I'm going to show that definition one more time. It's a spiritual quality that says, I'm going to remain poised and centered, even though there might be some great difficulties and danger. I'm going to have the courage to remain faithful in myself and faithful in the source of all that is. I don't have to know everything. I just have to know who I am and that I'm willing to stay the course. And so we'll be talking about all of the things that can impact that developmental characteristic of courage. We all had it. You would not be where you are without it. It's still within you. And just like a child, you have to practice, practice, practice. You have to stay faithful to yourself. And how can you practice courage every single day? I say that many of us are courageous because we decide to get up every day and go out in the world. That, for me, is courage. Hi, my love. That, for me, is courage. I'm telling you, I haven't even spent a full week with the little people, and they already got me. On Thursday, I started feeling ill. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't even been in here that long to catch something. But kids can be germ magnets. And I said, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to do what I know to do based upon things that I learned from, my mother, grandmother, and others to get myself to a place where I feel well because I got to show up on Monday. Lord knows I would love to just stay in the bed and wait for this thing to take its course. But I'm like, no, 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 no. There are people depending upon me. I am dependent upon me. And so I got to find the courage, even though my body is telling me, I don't think you feel well. I think something's going on. My emotionally, I'm feeling like, no, we can't just sit and let this sickness take us over. And so I'm feeling better now. Nope, we don't know what happens when I get back in that environment with the little people and their germs, but they give me courage. We had a fire drill the other day. I know as an adult, I don't like surprises. I can't imagine being a little person and the fire alarm is going off and you were in the middle of doing something and now the adults are like, we got to go outside. We got to. And every single one of those kids were compliant. They were like, okay, this is a new experience. For some of them, it was their new, the first time going through a fire drill, and they just did it. And I know that I have been in circumstances with adults who cry, complain, well, why do we got to do this? And where are we supposed to go? And this is taking up too much time, or I'm not even going to go outside for the fire drill. These babies were more compliant than adults are. That's the type of courage that we have to have in our lives. That when we hear a call, when there's something new, that we're willing to face it. We're willing to see, where is this going to take me? We're willing to see what we're made of. We're willing to see how much we can rely on ourselves instead of what's going out in the world and what people are saying. And so, if you had an experience when you were younger, and not just in this developmental stage, because this carries over, this may be where it begins, but this carries over. If you had an experience in your life where you may have had a caregiver whose intentions were not for the benefit of your emotional health, I'll say it that way. Maybe they saw your independence as defiance. Sometimes caregivers want to be in so much control that as children develop and start to become more independent and more free, they feel threatened. And sometimes inappropriate aggressiveness, whether it's verbal or physical, could be part of your childhood story. That absolutely can create a disruption in challenges that you may have right now when it comes to being courageous, taking risks, making choices that are different than the choices that you want to make, always doing the same thing or not wanting to do anything different, easily influenced by others because that was your experience when you were supposed to be developing freedom and autonomy and learning about who you are in relation with the world. Someone else had another intention. Again, I grew up in that era of children are to be seen and not heard. So nobody was looking out for our emotional well being or our emotional health or giving us what we need, facilitating this emotional growth. And even now, when I hear children crying and we're like, stop that crying, we didn't even ask or try to figure out why children are crying. We just want it to stop instead of asking, well, what's going on? Or just letting them cry. Sometimes we are the ones that are disrupting the emotional health of other people because we don't like it when other people express their emotions. And that's not just a childhood experience, that could be your experience now, where you are expressing yourself emotionally and you might be around people who, that's a no no. What you crying for? I don't know how to support you. Or you're trying to have a conversation with someone on an emotional level and they're shut down. They may have had they may have had that experience when they were younger that nobody taught them how to regulate their emotions. Or emotions are a no-no. We don't go there. We're going to have to get in touch with who we are emotionally if we're going to get in touch with who we are spiritually. That is a great point. That is a great point. How to express yourself without judging yourself. I don't know how many times I've come on here and told y'all I'm a crybaby. And I used to catch a lot of hell for that. You always crying. What you crying about now? I don't even know what I'm crying about. If something touches me emotionally, that's the way I express myself. Sometimes I'm crying when I'm happy, sometimes I'm crying when I'm sad. It doesn't matter. The tears are going to flow very easily. If I ever got hired as an actress and they were like, we need you to cry on cue, I got that job. And I used to be made fun of for it, bullied for being an overly emotional child. Instead of it being celebrated, instead of someone facilitating me regulating what that meant and being in touch with what that meant. Y'all know my favorite book. I don't even know where it is at this point. Um, in other indigenous cultures, crying is seen as a higher form of emotional expression. As a matter of fact, there are some cultures where collectively the entire community comes together to cry. Can you imagine if you got together with some people and y'all said, we get together to laugh, we get together to be upset. How often do we get together, other than funerals? How often do we get together to cry with one another? How often do we make that a daily process so that we are restoring ourselves emotionally? And a lot of the clients that I work with, I will tell them it feels like you have a cry in your throat that needs to be expressed. If that was not supported when you were younger, you may be challenged right now with expressing yourself without judging yourself. Let the tears flow. And I've talked about this before. Anger, particularly when it comes to women, is not always an emotion that we allow ourselves to express because we may be worried about what that says about us, what other people will say about us. God forbid if you're a Black woman and you're angry, as if Black women don't have a right to be angry. But sometimes we suppress it. We suppress the anger because if we go back to when we were kids, no one showed us how to do that. If you grew up in an environment where the only lesson on anger that you got was that it was either explosive or at the other extreme, it was never talked about, then how are you as an adult supposed to regulate that if you didn't learn to regulate it when you were a child? I know I had that experience. My dad was an explosive, angry person. My mother bottled it up and then she would let it pop. No one taught me how to regulate my anger. As a matter of fact, I saw it as a weakness and as something that you didn't do. That if you were angry, somehow you were out of control. And most times, when we are angry about something and we're not expressing it, that's where we're trying to control the most. And that becomes uncontrollable. It can turn into disease, it can turn into so many other issues and problems. We've got to feel so that we can connect with who we are spiritually. It's a spiritual gift to feel. And so as we go through this month, I hope and I hope and I hope and I hope that we will also be connecting the dots on how much this deals with emotion. Again, one of the most emotional times of your life is this 18-month to 3-year age. Because I get the benefit of spending some time with them on a day-to-day basis, I'm getting more and more used to all of the crying that goes on. It used to bother me. Now I recognize and I'll say to myself, these are people who are learning to regulate their emotions. These are beings who are learning to deal with this most powerful skill that they have in their life. We have got to allow them the benefit of letting it be supported and not suppressed. And so, for any one of us who has ever felt emotionally suppressed. I know I have. And I know sometimes I have done the suppression, and I know sometimes others have done the suppression of my emotions by telling me how I should feel and when I should feel and when it's okay to feel whatever it is that I'm feeling. Now is a good time for us to meditate on that and the courage that it takes to be in tune with how you are feeling and the power it takes to express it fully. It's a very courageous act. And I hope that you start to see it that way. And so, if you have just started to learn how to express yourself without judging yourself, I say gold star for you because it does take a lot of courage. We are so programmed and wired to judge everything that we do. If we cry, we want to judge it. If we're angry, we want to judge it. If we're happy, sometimes we want to know, well, what are you happy about? You know, we've got to get to a point where we allow ourselves to feel whatever it is that you are feeling and give yourself full permission to express it, no matter where you are, no matter who is watching. And this doesn't mean at those extremes. It means in a way that you feel honors you and honors whoever you are expressing those emotions to. Just like a child who is learning, when is it appropriate for me to speak up for myself? When is it appropriate for me to ask for help? When is it appropriate for me to do things on my own versus always ask someone to do them for me? We are still dealing with those same issues as adults. How many of us not only have difficulty saying no, have difficulty asking for help because no one modeled that behavior for us? This is where that happens. I can tell you right now, one of the things that we are working with my grandbaby is asking for help. She want to do everything. She want to do everything, which is great, which is great. And we will let her explore as much as she can. But when there are times when she needs help, she needs to feel emotionally safe enough to say, hey, I need some help here. Because God knows we don't need another woman in my family who doesn't know how to ask for help. We got enough of those. We need to start developing women who know how to ask for help, who know that it is a courageous thing to do that. And if you think about the women in your generational line, how courageous is it to ask for help? I know the women in my family, it takes a lot of courage for us to get to that point. And so let us do as we always do, check your environment. Okay, well, you've just said it to everybody on YouTube. You are Miss Independent, but you need more help. So maybe that is the lesson for you this week, to learn how to ask for help and to ask yourself, why is it so challenging? Where did I learn that? Did I learn that in this developmental age and stage, 18 months to 3 years of age? Because maybe I did ask for help and the help wasn't there. That can also make it challenging for you to ask for help now. Were you given adult responsibilities way too early in your childhood? That could also make it challenging for you to ask for help. Because if your mother didn't do it, if no one showed you how to do it, where were you supposed to learn those things? Where were we supposed to learn? And was the commentary that you could ask for help, but no one's going to help you, or the help is going to be inadequate? Sometimes we feel like I would ask for help if there was adequate help around. We need to tell the truth about that. Sometimes it's us where we think that the help is not going to be what we need it to be. So why bother? All right. That also comes under setting healthy boundaries. How many of us were shown how to set a healthy boundary? Not many. Not many. And so, as we come into this right now moment, thinking about the courage that it takes to tell the truth, about all of the things that may have occurred in our lives when we were younger, whether we have a vivid memory of it or not. We can absolutely ask ourselves, based upon my family history, is it likely that I was supported emotionally when I was younger? Doesn't make your family a bad guy, bad guys. Doesn't mean that they didn't love you, that they didn't take care of you. We are just speaking facts and telling the truth. So take a deep breath. Check in with your body. Check in with every piece of your heart for the truth of that answer. Did I receive the emotional support that I needed when I needed it most? Did I have examples and models of behavior of regulating emotions? Were the people around me who were caring for me, were they attentive? Or were they more concerned with making sure that I was following directions and not being defiant? Did I constantly need help and was help given? Or was I told that I always needed help and it seemed like I didn't want to ask for it? Because every time I asked for help, it may have started some chaos and argument. Was I too afraid to ask for help because I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing? Did I grow up in an environment where people were not patient with my learning style? You know, we all have different ways of learning. And if our caregivers are not attentive to the ways that we learned, they may have misguided how to give us what we needed. If you're a visual learner and you needed to see things, and perhaps your caregivers just didn't have the time, I don't have time to sit and show you. We got to go. So I'm just going to do it for you. Or I'm going to make you feel bad because you don't know how to do it for yourself. Did you grow up in an experience that your development may have been compared to someone else? You're not as smart as your sister, or you're smarter than your brother, or I got to do everything for you. How come you can't be like them? Search your heart for the truth of any experience that may have made you feel as though your needs were not valid and that you didn't receive what you needed emotionally. And as we come into those moments, you may have a vivid memory, or you may just have an inkling or a feeling that you might have experienced something similar that now creates difficulty and challenges when it comes to exacting courage in your day to day living, where you know you should be choosing one thing, but you keep choosing the same thing over and over. Because in your mind, it feels safe, it feels familiar, it feels comfortable. But you also know that it feels frustrating. If there are projects and things that you want to do, but you keep procrastinating because somehow you just keep finding other things to be a priority than the thing that you know you really want to focus on. This is a time and a place in our lives where our attention span starts to get longer and longer. And if you are an adult that feels like your attention span is getting shorter and shorter, then we may have to go back to the experience of a toddler who is learning how to develop their attention span to see what was the lesson. Did you have the experience then and now of taking the time that you need to take your time? We live in a society that is so rushed and so predictable in terms of we want things now. We're not willing to wait. We don't want to give things the full process of being born. We want everything right now in a hurry. Maybe that's not your way. Maybe you have a process that you've been disrupting for someone else's timeline. And that might cause you to disrupt your own process because it's taken too long. Tell the truth about where you are in terms of your emotional intelligence. Do you even know when you're on the verge of a tantrum? Do you know what your triggers are? What things set you off? That might sound like disrespect, even though no disrespect was intended, because you take it that way. Because somewhere along the way, developmentally, you may not have learned how to regulate your emotion. So everything feels like a threat, feels like a judgment, feels like a criticism, even if you are the one who's judging and criticizing. And as we are taking full deep breaths and telling ourselves the truth, I hope that we keep in our consciousness that as a child, when I needed to learn these things for my development, I was innocent. If I did not receive it then, I am challenged to give it to myself now. But we can tell our inner children, listen, 2-year-old Yolanda, I've got this. There's no need for you to engage in toddler behavior where you are pouting, you are frustrated, you are shutting down emotionally because you feel as though your needs are not being met. Adult Yolanda is here to meet your needs. And if that feels good to you, then say it to yourself. Adult you is here to meet the needs of younger you. I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to support you emotionally by allowing you to discover how you feel about everything. If you need to cry, then cry. Don't judge it, don't label it. Allow your body to have that release so that you can get the information that you need that will come from it. If no one was there to answer the cries when you were younger, I am here now to hear, to feel, and to experience what your needs are. Hmm. And if you know or have experienced challenges with people telling you that you are courageous, then tell the truth about it. Maybe other people have noticed within you a beautiful courage. And internally, you're saying, yeah, but you don't know about this, you don't know about that. How often are you complimenting yourself on the courage that it takes just to be you? We need to feel that. We need to feel good about the choices that we are making in our lives. We need to feel good about where we are, even if we are in a challenging situation. The fact that you are aware of it and the fact that you have something within you that has been in you since you were a child means that you have the possibility of meeting that challenge. As I said to a mother the other day who was talking about her child not, being potty trained, I said, there are very few, if any, adults that go to college in diapers. We will get there eventually. Do not allow this milestone in your child's life to be the definition of who they are. Let them go through their process. Let them feel what they need to feel about that process so that they have full autonomy over their bodies. Or we are going to have adults who don't feel safe in their own bodies, who don't feel like they can make choices about their bodies without everybody else's input. If you know what your process is when you are making choices, making decisions, then stand by it. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, you're moving too slow or you're moving too fast. You move at the pace that you need to move at, even if it's different than what you used to do or in different circumstances. Become so comfortable with who you are and how you operate that you won't let the external challenges and perceived dangers have you changing who you are. We all practice courage on a day to day basis by opening our eyes and saying that we want to be part of the world. It's courageous to love. It's courageous to laugh. It's courageous to have joy in the midst of challenging circumstances. Give yourself credit for the courage that you have and the courage that you are developing, and that you are noticing when you are setting boundaries and when you're not, that you can feel in your body when you're being impulsive and when you are being careful. And just like at that developmental age and stage where children learn through playing, I hope that you are allowing for some playing in your life. That's how you got this far. All children learn through play. Adults, we should still be playing. And that means creating joy and joyful experiences in your life. You cannot just be working, 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 working all of the time. Have the courage to say, no work today. I'm going to play. Have the courage to call a friend up and say, come play with me. Have the courage to say no to that job that keeps asking you to stay over and do more work, but they may not be compensating you. Have the courage to say no like a 2-year-old. No. Your no better mean no. We did not come here to be robots who are just being good girls and good boys and doing as we're told. We came here to experience life. Are you experiencing life? And do you have the courage to do so? Hmm. Everybody take a deep breath. We talked about telling the truth. We talked about being honest with ourselves when we know we are engaging in adult tantrums. Let us be very clear that when it comes to your emotional well being, your environment is key. If you know that you are in an environment that is damaging your emotional well being, then you have to be courageous enough to either leave that environment or make some changes so that if you remain, your emotional well being is stabilized. We cannot afford to wait for the environments to get better so that we will be better. Please be courageous enough to choose yourself every single time. I just saw a young lady on camera talking about how she cries every single day when she comes home from work because she cannot stand her job. If that is your experience, you've got to be courageous enough to choose something else. And I know that there are other factors that weigh into that. We got to feed ourselves, we got to pay our bills, and there's not always enough resources for us to be able to do that. And sometimes we find ourselves in situations that are damaging to our emotional health. So if you have to remain in a toxic environment, then you have got to develop courage to do some things for yourself so that your emotional well being is not further damaged. And I'm going to show that definition one more time because courage is a spiritual quality. And so if you've got to remain in a relationship, if you've got to remain in a job, if you've got to remain in a family that you know is damaging you emotionally, then you better tap into that spiritual quality of courage to figure out how can I remain poised and centered in God amidst the great difficulties and dangers that I am experiencing. Because if you're waiting for the environment to change, then that's a surefire way to continue to contribute to your emotional damage. Waiting for other people to be different, waiting for the experience to be different, waiting for the job, the relation, waiting for those things to happen is going to contribute to your emotional instability. Courage says, I recognize that I have a spiritual quality where whatever y'all doing, that chaos y'all are creating, that has nothing to do with me. I am centered in who I am. I am centered in what I believe. I am centered in the behavior that I'm going to exhibit. Y'all can act crazy and chaotic if you want to. I can't fall into that pattern with you. And there have been times in my life where I have had to tell people, you are trying to take me somewhere that I don't want to go. I'm not going into your chaos. I'm not going into your confusion. I'm not going to be a part of it. I do not want to be parts of conversations or experiences that are going to damage me emotionally. Why would I do that? Why would we do that? It could be because when we did not have the choice, we were in experiences and environments that damaged us emotionally. And so, if you had that experience as a child when you did not have a choice, you do not have to do it as an adult where you do have the choice. But it can be challenging. For those of us who grew up in chaotic households, quiet might be unnerving to you. It's like when people move from the city to the suburbs and they're like, it's too quiet out here. I can't go to sleep. There's no cars. There's no, city noise going on. It's because your nervous system gets used to the chaos. And so when the chaos is not going around, your nervous system is like, what is this? Quiet? I don't know what this is. There have been studies of young children who, even though they're playing and laughing, when they've taken scans of their brains and their blood pressure, it is still in a heightened sense of trauma. Just because someone is smiling doesn't mean that they're not experiencing trauma. Sometimes, for many of us, it's a defense mechanism. We want to laugh, we want to joke, and inside, whew, it's a whole lot of chaos going on. And so we have to use that spiritual quality that we all were born with that says, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to regulate myself. I'm not going to get caught up in other people's chaos and confusion. I've got to figure out, how do I keep myself centered? And many of you talked about it. Practicing courage. It's not just something that happens. You got to practice it. Learning how to express yourself without judgment. Crying in community. Finding communities where you can be yourself and be emotionally uplifted. Ah, recognizing that you might be too independent and need to learn how to ask for help. These are all skills that we learn in this developmental age and stage. It's not new. It's not new at all. We've been here before. We've learned these things before. It's within you. It has not left you, but you have to decide as an adult, am I going to give my little people what they need, what they may not have received, or the thing that I still need now? We think because we've matured in age that we don't still need to be protected and felt safe. I said the other day, I really need to be sitting in somebody's lap and have them rocking me back and forth. Like, that's the way I felt. We still need that nurturing. We still need that care. We still need that concern that contributes to our emotional well being. And it contributes to us having faith in ourselves. Just like a child who's not going to give up just because they fell down, or just because the adult said, no, you're too young for that, or it's not time for you to learn that. They still want to figure it out. So think about courage as a spiritual quality that you are willing to work at, that you are willing to create habits around. If you got to take out your journal and write courage at the top of the page, and then write all of the ways that you are willing to practice. Are you willing to practice setting boundaries? I hope so. Are you willing to express yourself? Are you willing to tell the truth when you're upset? No matter who might feel some way about it. Your emotions, your feelings are valid. Other people are not always going to validate them, but if you don't validate them, that's almost criminal. Finish some of those things that you started. That will also help build up your courage and your faith in yourself. That you're not just like a bee going from this project to that project, from this flower to that flower to that flower, not really finishing anything. You have the ability to do that. It's been within you since you were younger. And now is a great time to tell our little people, we got this. We got this. Whatever didn't happen was not your fault. Whatever did happen was not your fault. I'm going to take care of us now. I'm going to tap into that spiritual quality that says, I have all that I need to figure out the challenges internally. I may not be able to control them people out there. However, when we start to set those healthy boundaries and control ourselves, I always say other people are either going to rise to the occasion or they're going to find someone else to play with. Because if I am demonstrating courage to say no, courage to say yes, courage to express myself, courage to be who I am, and to make sure that I am emotionally well, and I recognize that you're not, then my choices are easy. I'm going to always choose me if you're not choosing emotional health for both of us. I love y'all, and you already know what to do. I love the language of practicing courage. It's not just something like, the Wizard of Oz that's given out to some people and not others. Sometimes experiences come into our life for us to see, where is my courage? Where am I at with my courage? Am I 10%? Am I 20%? Or am I all the way there where I'm saying, yes, we're going to meet this head on? We're going to do this. I'm telling you, you have it within you. You would not have gotten this far. One of the things that I remember from, I think, kindergarten is I had a horrible time learning how to tie my shoes. It took me forever. Now, every time, not every time, but most time when I tie my shoes, I laugh. It's like, I can't believe this was such a horrible thing for me as a child. And look at me, I can do it with my eyes closed. You've had it. If I didn't have the courage to keep trying, I'd be out here wearing Velcro shoes for the rest of my life and avoiding the thing that frustrated me so much when I was a child. We've had it since we were kids, that courage, that spiritual quality. We can call upon it now. And anywhere that you may be feeling that you're not courageous, that's just your little people. It's your little people. Ask them, well, how old are you feeling right now? And what can I do for you now that you probably needed then? I'm here for you. And similar to your inner children and the children that I get to now play with on a day-to-day basis, I am here for you. So many of you have scheduled hours. Now, my hours have changed, but they're still available. They're still there. Go to my website. There's a link. Schedule offers out hours with me so we can talk some more if you want to have deeper conversation. If you really, really, really want to get deep, then join us in the Evolve community. It's a subscription based program where we go deeper into inner children healing. We do monthly healing sessions. I think I'm going to increase those monthly sessions to 2 sessions a month because whew, it's rough out here, y'all. It's rough out here. And I recognize that I want to increase my spiritual practices. And so if I'm going to increase for myself, I want to share that with others. And so the price is not going to change, but you may be getting more than we were doing with our monthly healing sessions. But I know that each and every single one of us has the ability to support one another. So if there's anything that I can do, either in this space on Sunday or outside of the space, give me a call, send me an email, go to my website. And I promise, as I am figuring out this new normal for myself, I will start to regulate all of the different places and spaces that I show up. I am hey, Miss Erica. Hey, I am so grateful for each and every single one of you. Thank you for the encouragement and the confirmation. And I hope that your new experience, even if you're feeling unsettled, it's where you're supposed to be. It is where you're supposed to be. And they've been waiting for you. And so thank you from Chicago, from North Carolina, from all parts in between. I love you. Next week we're going to talk about shame. Now, we've talked about shame before, but that shows up in this developmental stage. And so we talked about courage. We got to go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about shame and how that could be eating away at our courage. I can't think of all of the ways that shame showed up for me last week. Um, Other people may not have recognized it, but I recognized it. I recognize when I am operating from a place of shame. So we'll talk about that next week. We're going to talk about the 2-year-old's favorite word, which is no, and how we can develop a strong no in our life. You have to, because the takers don't have it. So those of us who consider ourselves to be givers, we have to have a strong no. It does not make you a horrible person to say no. As a matter of fact, it can make you one of the most loving people in the world to say no. And so we'll talk about that. And then, of course, we're going to talk about freedom, because who else is as free as a little toddler outside without any barriers, just running wild and crazy? I love it. I'm grateful that I get to see it, and I'm grateful that I get to share it with you. Again, if there's anything that I can do to support you on your spiritual journey, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. It's what I love to do. It is my ministry. It's what I believe I am here for. And so I'm grateful to do that together. I love you guys. Have an amazing rest of your Sunday. Courageously.